Just confirm that this is actually running. Just got a new computer from work last Thursday, and I haven't had a chance to cut over to it yet. Okay. Seem to be all set. Wig, can you lead things off while I'm checking the nuts and bolts parts?
I was refilling my tea.
No problem. No problem. I will edit the beginning.
No, it's
back.
okay. It's all right. Hi, I'm Wig Zamore, and this is the last general meeting of the MBTA Rider Oversight Committee for 2021. And I think we usually start with public comments. I don't know that we need to do introductions. Do folks think so?
Well, with 6 of us here, might as well just say, hi, I'm Stefan. I'm the co-chair and the geek running the Zoom and the YouTube stream. And Wig, I'll let you introduce yourself and then call on somebody else.
Yeah, I'm Wig Zamore, Somerville, focus on land use, transport, environment, and health in kind of my grassroots activism, which is I consider this to be part of. And I'll pass it off to Craig.
Hi, Craig Laskowski, public member. I live in Milton, so naturally interested in the Red Line and the Mattapan high-speed line. I think I have a little bit of a delay here on my video for some reason versus the audio, so I may go off video here.
Actually, it looks fine. It looks fine for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Oh, it does. Okay. It just must be the whatever playback loop I'm getting on my end.
Yeah.
Yep, it's fine. Yeah, your audio and video are all synced up and looks fine. It's probably just an artifact of me sharing my screen, showing all of you for the purposes of YouTube.
And then Len, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, maybe Craig, if you look at the right-hand version of you, it'll be in sync, whereas the one on his screen, has a delay. So I'm Leonard Diggins, and I live in East Arlington, and primarily use the Red Line these days. Alewife to MGH. So let me see. I'll hand it off to Sandy Johnson.
Thanks, Len. Sandy Johnston. I'm here tonight to staff the ROC meeting for the Central Transportation Planning staff, provide commentary and technical support as desired. Nice to be here.
And finally, Barry, as our honorary representative from APTA, you want to say hi? I mean APT. You don't have to, Barry.
Hello, Barry Steinberg.
Gotcha, loud and clear.
Just saying hello.
Yep, glad to have you. Barry, do you want to make any public comment? Anything you want to state to lead us off?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, I will ask again at the end of the meeting. Okay, we're a little behind schedule. Apologies for the technical glitch there, but I want to start by, well, obviously it's the end of the year, and it was another very sad year for everyone who's been suffering with COVID and the impacts, economic and social, and obviously the impacts on public transit with the diminished riderships and lower numbers of operators for buses. Between the 6 of us, do any of you want to participate in sort of summarizing from your own perspective the year and, give any insights? Because I was hoping that this year-end meeting, with a little bit of light attendance expected for the holidays, would be very much a participatory thing tonight, sharing what each of us have taken out of 2021 and also to say where we want to turn our attention for 2022. What do you think? I guess that was kind of an open-ended thing.
Sure, sure. So just get the discussion going. I'm sure people engage, and we'll do it for, I guess, whatever time it'll take to get us back on track with the schedule.
Yep. Okay. Well, I can show a couple of details to start off of material that is from some of the public meetings that I attended recently. This is some of what I wanted to wrap up just to be able to show to other folks. Get that out of the way. I'm not going to spend too much time on these individual presentations because they're not mine. And although I attended, clearly I'm not the subject matter expert, but this particular project I wanted to share with all of you because it is particularly notorious and has had a significant amount of impact, pun intended, play on words intended, when there's trucks impacting the bridge. It takes the line, the Franklin line, out of service for sometimes hours and hours while the bridge is being inspected. It's going to be a higher bridge by about another 1.5 feet. Right now it's 12'3", and that 12'3" gives us things like this. You may have seen this on the news. And another one, another day was, I think it's actually, maybe it's the same. Nope, I thought I had it queued up. I lost my marker. There we go. This happens a couple times a year, if I understand it right. And that's the bridge in question. And we're talking about a complete replacement of the decking. It's going to be, as it says, wider, 5 foot wider than the existing. There is going to be sidewalks on both sides, which right now you can see there are no sidewalks, and so pedestrians are fighting against the traffic coming in either direction. And the narrowness is also contributed to having many head-on collisions. And it's going to be a 14-foot instead of the current 12'3". And according to what they said, the 14-foot is a minimum federal standard for height. So it's not going to be as high as what other bridges would like to have. As it says here, optimal height is 16.5. But 14 is the recommended minimum coming from the Federal Highway, I forget what FHWA is, but the Federal Highway Department.
It's Federal Highway Administration.
The W though?
It's part of highway.
Oh, okay. Oh, is it is HW Highway? Okay,
I think
Federal
so.
Highway Administration. Thanks
I think
for that.
so. Sandy
Okay.
would probably know, but I think so.
Yes, that's correct. Federal Highway Administration.
Oh, cool. I didn't know the W was called out in the acronym. Thank you for that. As with a lot of projects, it's going to be the accelerated type where they're going to build the new span just adjacent to the project, the project site, and they're just basically going to demolish the old one and heave the new one in all in a weekend. So I think that they've got all their I's dotted and T's crossed. I just wanted to present this to you because I believe this is this might be the only remaining low clearance bridge. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's the very last low clearance bridge that's actually been causing commuter rail service interruptions across the entire commuter rail system. So it's kind of a big deal, and it's made national attention that this bridge is still so low and so bad. I'll leave it there unless any of you gents have any questions about that?
Well, I've got a couple comments actually. So I think there was one bridge on Storrow Drive which used to be involved in the most incidents. But I just want to relate that when I was, a youngster in college, one year I remodeled a Ryder trucking place in Portland. They had someone who rented trucks twice and hit the same bridge, knocked the top of the truck off. But I do wonder. I mean, this is outside our purview, but since there's an official ideal height of 16 feet 6 inches, I don't know why there isn't a color-coded warning system that's just used nationally that would alert all drivers the same standard. Maybe use 3 different colors for maybe there's a green color for the bridges that are 16.6 or higher, and there's a couple other colors ending in red for the lowest category. I think if there was a single standard, drivers would get used to it very, very quickly. And, truck drivers don't really like the top of their truck being knocked off. It's a little bit too exciting.
That's a really interesting idea, Wig. And next time we talk to anybody in engineering, or if people like, I can drop a note to the this project team and ask them about that. I mean, that's very interesting.
And Stefan, there may be states that, the states have highway departments that are independent of each other, and there may be some states that are a little bit more ahead on this than others. So that might be something that's fairly easy to ask the folks who go to all the national transportation conferences, including some from Massachusetts.
I like that. I will take a note to do that. One thing I did want to convey to you folks is that during that public meeting, there was a significant amount of public comment from residents in that area saying that if I don't want to cast aspersions on those residents, but a significant number of people living in that neighborhood said, please do not raise the height of the bridge because that's just going to encourage more big trucks to be going through our neighborhood. And we don't want that. We would rather have the low clearance bridge, which keeps big trucks from going through here. I don't want to say it's sort of bordering on NIMBYism, but do you gents have any recollection of any other prior projects where the MBTA project was actually going to possibly introduce more road traffic? I don't think I've heard of such a case, and I don't even know if the MBTA has any choice but to rebuild this bridge to keep it from getting hit and having commuter rail interruptions.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not MBTA, but a historical footnote on the subject. Robert Moses, the great use great with a grain of salt. The prolific is the word I'm looking for. Prolific urban designer of New York City in the 40s and 50s and 60s, who kind of had, he owned kind of urban planning in New York City for 30 years. The story is that he built all the parkways out to Long Island as parkways as opposed to highways, so they would have lower bridge heights intentionally. And because they were lower bridge heights, public buses would not be able to go down on those roadways. So it was whether it's how true it is and how much of it's urban legend at this point versus reality is the story was that poor people rode buses and he didn't want poor people visiting the beaches of Long Island. That Long Island was for the elite, and so they were all made, all the overpasses there were made low for that intended purpose. So this is a little bit different. This is folks just kind of, if you live in the neighborhood, I understand not wanting that semi truck going down the street, but I think I thought it was for those who haven't heard that story, and Wade clearly has. He's nodding. It's an interesting historical footnote.
Absolutely is.
And I believe that Secretary Buttigieg actually told that story in public recently, and there was an eruption over just how factual it is, because I think there's some people who studied it and said, well, maybe Robert Moses wasn't explicitly trying to keep the poor Black kids in the city from going to the beach, but there is some truth to it for sure. And it's definitely a useful kind of illustrative anecdote. I don't think I have access to the chat other than to chat the panelists, but I'm going to put a link in the chat here, wearing kind of my other hat as the MPO's freight planner, and maybe somebody who can send it to all of us can send it around. But this is a study my colleague Bill Kuttner did a few years ago that looks at weight and height restrictions on truck travel around the Boston region. And, if you look at the study, it probably wouldn't surprise anybody that many of the height restrictions are in fact bridges under railroads in a very comparable situation to this one. So while I don't know personally of any situations where you get the neighbors turning out and saying, please make the trucks go away, which is something that may or may not be realistic in any given situation, there are certainly other analogous situations where that may be very, very similar to this one, where the issue may come up. And where it's possible that even the MBTA has rebuilt some of these bridges since this memo was written. But I wouldn't be surprised to see it come up elsewhere.
Thank you so much for that. I'm dropping that right now into the YouTube stream as well.
Great.
Excellent. I'll take both. I'll put the main doc link and the PDF right into YouTube chat. Thank you.
Hey, by the way, we may have discussed this last month, but
I
since
meant to show. Go ahead.
since most of the tractor trailers come into the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles, and then make their way cross country, I may have brought this up before, but there's no reason that those products couldn't be hauled by rail to east of the Sierras on electrified rail, and that would cut down a huge amount on the total air pollution burden in Los Angeles. And if you had 3 cross-country electrified rail lines that could carry trailers and then get locally distributed, trucks are really, really good at their granularity. That's what happened to the railroads, right? The trucks they can get to every spot they need to get to, but they're nowhere near as efficient as rail for long haul.
From your mouth to God's ears, Wig.
Yep, absolutely right.
No, I mean, I think that the truth is there's also mode share to be won from road to rail, just on that kind of Southern California to the Eastern Seaboard trip. Even now, even without the electrification, and obviously the electrification would be much cleaner, but rail is cleaner than road one way or the other. And we know that rail is not winning its maximal mode share because of various service issues and just the structure of how things are priced, and effectively the trucking enjoys a subsidy because it's using publicly funded roadways and it's not paying the full expense of having those trucks on the roadways. The issue here in Massachusetts is that with the major intermodal terminal having moved from Beacon Yards in Alston out to Worcester, we're still going to have, even if intermodal were to take away a lot of that mode share, we'd still have significant local truck growth in VMT here in Eastern Massachusetts. We'd still have a lot of trucks on the road.
Yeah. Well, the last 10 miles is probably a lot more debatable whether rail could come back. But anyway, you and I agree completely in principle here.
And count me in as also being in agreement.
Good to know. Good. There are dozens of us, right?
Yep.
Yes, at least.
Actually, 2 last quick things I wanted to mention about this project, which I think are worth mentioning, is that the new abutments are going to be the same type of micropile foundation structure as has been used on a lot of other bridges, including the new one that's going by BET and the Commercial Street Bridge replacement in Lynn is also planned for this. And one of the things that makes this so compelling is that they can put in the micropile new abutments while the service is still running. And then only when the new abutments are already all in place, then they can demolish the old span and the old abutments, which are these inside ones. And so you can see the huge amount of extra space that they're going to get, and having sidewalks on either side is going to be tremendous. And as I was saying before, at the moment there are no sidewalks, and so it's really a hazardous thing if you're on any kind of a mode other than automobile. And the other thing to mention is that they're going to be using this parking lot area, which serves the Endicott commuter rail station. This is going to be the staging area and where the new span is going to be constructed. So they're doing it right on site. I don't recall what the again, play on words intended, what the span of time is going to be to build the new span and for how long these parking spots are going to be out of commission. But at very least, they're not doing any kind of a land taking, even temporarily, for building it. It's going to all be within existing MBTA property, and then they just swing the new span in during, I believe it's expected to be one weekend. So I can wrap it up there unless anybody has anything else that, any concerns, I guess. Part of the reason why I was bringing all this up is just, this is a particularly notable bridge replacement, and I wanted to vet it with you as our role of oversight. If there's nothing, then I can move on. Next thing I wanted to show was Scott Hamway led, along with Alexandra Markowitz, led the presentation about the fleet and facility modernization. The idea for Arborway is going to be heading up the all-electric fleet. The new Quincy facility, as I think I showed in a previous ROC meeting, is going to be battery electric bus, but not entirely at first. It's going to be starting off with, as it says, oh, I'm sorry, it's only going to, yes, supporting the transition, yes. So the Quincy facility is going to be transitional, going from diesel to battery electric, but the Arborway project is going to be completely battery electric. I thought this photo was very compelling. Lots of open space, and I'll show you the plot plan here. Yeah, here we go. So lots of space involved. This used to be all for streetcar storage back in this off to the right. The streetcars used to come in, and there was a loop track and lots of storage over back here. I mean, Barry might know this better than me. I don't believe there's anything currently in this whole area above where it says 500 Arborway. I believe it's just open and storage. And
I was at the Arborway public meeting a couple weeks ago. I believe they said there's still some residual back office functions at the 500 Arborway building, but not much going on over there for sure.
Thank you. Excellent. Yeah, Barry, go ahead. You were going to say something?
I haven't seen too much activity over there. There's nothing. I pass very, very infrequently, but where it used to be a beehive of activity, there's very little going on there now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And as it's showing us here, the current bus operations are going to be maintained in this area where they are currently, and all of the new construction is going to be in this 500 Arborway area. And then once the new, and I think it's very interesting, multi-level with kind of a look very similar to, oh, that is the Quincy. Yeah, Quincy rendering as visual precedent. And then it's going to be turned over to mixed use development for 3 acres and almost 5 acres here. So I'm extremely happy with this plan. I'm thrilled. It looks like it's designed for far future thinking, being all battery, combination of 40 and 60 plus administrative space. It's not going to be particularly out of character for the height, as they say, building height comparable. I think this design is really knocking it out of the park. I couldn't be more thrilled about this, but again, opportunity for you gents to weigh in here.
Can I rain on your parade a little bit, Stefan?
Absolutely.
My only concern about it is there seems to be very I think I'd have to step back. It seems like they're fully utilizing the space there, which is good in a dense urban area, but at the same time, I see very little room for natural greenery or replacing the trees. And one of the beautiful things about the Arborway is that in many ways it's a highway, but in many ways it's a traditional parkway. It's a very pretty stretch with mature trees on it, and I worry a little bit here about putting a giant MBTA building, scrunching that into one area, directly against the Arborway, and then 2 big, massive redevelopment sites. So in a way, I understand from strictly a bus operations perspective, it's a home run, but from a deforestation of the Emerald Necklace, I have a little bit of concerns that landing strip they have of about 4 feet of Emerald Necklace it's a very weak Emerald Necklace, put it that way.
I hear your point. Yeah, I get that. I don't know if it's worse than what it is now, though. I mean, it's going to be turning over, all of these acres on the left for development, and it's not going to be completely devoid of greenery in those developments, I'm sure.
Go back to the satellite view, if you don't mind. So there's yeah, I mean, I guess it's not necessarily worse. I mean, I do clearly see some existing trees there. We'll see where they go. And that is very much a, the 3600 Washington Street is already very much, at least appears to be pretty much clear cut.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, there's but inside the red lines of the existing, I mean, there's nothing growing. I mean, there's a little bit of green.
But I would say that they're not. It's not necessarily making it worse. I would just argue that there is a missed opportunity here to set back the future building that'll be at 500 Arborway a little bit more, and to increase the amount of green space in trees, and possibly put a bike lane in, or something of that nature on that side as part of the design, as opposed to purely thinking about this is the world's greatest bus garage.
I hear you. Yeah.
Is there any solar in the bus garage, Stefan?
Oh, I believe it is. Let me search in this doc. I thought that all the new facilities were going to have
Some
solar.
solar arrays.
Yeah,
That's good.
I believe in the Quincy project was going to be the first one to have solar all over. I don't recall exactly. Sandy, since you were also in that meeting, do you remember?
I recall there was some discussion of solar. I think they said that it was too early to say exactly what the details were going to be, because it's, you know, the earliest is going to be open is going to be 2027, so they're still negotiating with solar providers, but the roof is definitely going to be able to support solar of some sort. I mean, my own feeling about it is that I might rather see residential development on top of the garage, but my understanding is that the T is not super duper interested in that right now.
Yeah, that would be my preference too. You know,
Yeah.
or maybe even like some adult education or something, like training people to work. I mean, in
I think they
facilities.
did
But
say there's going to be like classroom and locker room space for the drivers, and maybe like for the drivers union, for
Yeah.
all I know,
Yeah.
in the garage.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not the same thing as having the
Yeah.
community space.
Yeah, but even if you put something, you know, housing or whatever, I mean, education on top, it's gonna have to have a roof. I mean,
You can still put
yeah,
solar on top of that, even if you have
yeah,
several stories to
yeah,
it.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I like to see more development. Those places. I mean, I hear where Craig's coming from. And my feeling is if you're not going to be able, you know, to put trees, you know, then let's get some elevation and get some more development out of it. But I think I heard Stefan say if it wasn't for here, then for the Quincy site, that they are conscious. They're trying to be conscious about elevation in order to remain similar to the neighborhood. You know,
Yeah, I mean, the buildings across the street
Exactly.
on the other side of the arborway are too short. They just look weird in their context. But
yeah,
I mean, it's just sad to me because, you know, the nice thing about an electric bus garage is that it's not toxic, right? You can't really build on top of a diesel bus garage because there's too many fumes. An electric bus garage, you actually do have an opportunity to do something with.
right.
So I don't know. We'll see what they come up with. I live in JP for what it's worth, so I have some personal investment in this.
That's good. Good.
So I think all of the comments are correct and compatible with each other. There's no reason you couldn't have a 20-foot walk and bikeway with trees on either side. And the trees, you know, if you put residential on top, the trees are just going to dress that up as well. So, you know, I don't really see any need to maximize out to the site boundary for the building itself.
I should also point out that the employee parking is going to be inside the footprint of the building and underground. So that's, I mean, that's an additional benefit for this design. Is it, you know, there's not going to be anything on the
Yep.
footprint of the property that's really not enclosed in the structure, and that's, so, you know, it's not going to be an eyesore or an asphalt wasteland the way that the current setup is now on these left-hand parts.
Right, but you keep going back to the current. I want to improve what's there, not put the world's nicest bus garage. It's that image there and the Quincy rendering as visual precedent. Like, and I understand it's just an architectural rendering, it's not reality, but like scattering 5 kind of trees to check the box of, look, we replanted the greenway, like is the replan of the Emerald Necklace is yeah.
Yeah, I get your point. I mean, but
I agree with Wig that my comments are compatible with everybody else's. That there's, this plays into a broader issue with the T where I don't, when they do projects that they very few times do they step in with another developer at the same time. Like where I'm trying to say with that is, there's an opportunity at the Heinz Convention Green Line stop that they're gonna that developer is gonna help pay for opening building. They're gonna build a building and they're gonna put more of of the stop or of the head house and such will be inside that building. This is different. It's obviously not a head house, but the idea of, you know, that they just kind of gave away the space over there and are going to build their piece over here, as opposed to trying to make that a combo building with part bus garage, part, you know, other things above it. It doesn't seem to be in the T's wheelhouse as much, that they like to, you know, I go back to even things like, you know, the government center garage where, or government center head house, where, you know, like, could you have fit that into a building there as opposed to just having a head house by itself? I understand the challenges with it. You got to find the right partner. It takes forever, but there just doesn't seem to be a lot of partnerships on things like this. I mean, I'm not phrasing it well, but I don't know if anybody else agrees with me or disagrees.
Yeah, well, I think there's a fair number of precedents, and we could probably have a meeting in the future just devoted to co-development. You've got the Green Line project. I think it's out at the end of the line in Newton, right? That's on the highway.
Right.
And so that has had an interesting history of discussion and effort. You've got some pretty big stuff in Quincy. So I think that's all correct. The other thing is, if the T is going underground with parking, which I think is a good idea, because if you're going to use a slurry wall, for example, the parking underground is pretty relatively inexpensive, and you may as well share it. The great thing about parking underground is it's not occupied space, and that preserves above ground space for occupation, whether it's where people live or where they work or where they recreate or where there's retail, whatever. Occupied space is a lot more important for above ground structures. And even if they became a public parking area for overnight for some of the co-developed spaces, I think that works too. I mean, there's a long history of the T understanding the nexus of parking and T facilities, especially as people come in from less dense areas in their cars and then switch over to cleaner modes to get into the city. That all tends to work. But anyway, so I think all of that is compatible, but and the T always has had either integrated or a side group that has dealt with that. So that is an interesting topic.
Well, let me ask you gents this. Would it make any difference if the developers of these 3.2 and 4. Call it 4.9 acre parcels would commit to a certain level of green space within their developments? I mean, in other words, if the MBTA feels like it needs to maximize the structure for the facility and have, as you're rightly pointing out, very little green around it other than what's kind of like a community path connector right here. If we find out that the developer is going to commit to X% of green in their parcels, does that make a difference to you guys?
You can take to the bank that the city of Boston is extracting the last dollar, if they can, from every one of these private sector developments. So there's always a trade-off discussion on, how much of it is a higher level of affordable housing, how deep is the affordability, how much of it is neighborhood retail, how much of it is green space. That's almost on private property, that conversation in places like Cambridge and Boston usually absorbs 100% of what the developer can give already. So I'm not sure, especially as Sandy knows, I mean, this is a really highly desired neighborhood. And as other close-in transit adjacent neighborhoods are.
Yeah, and I think there's also the other factor here that they kept referring to in the meeting, and I'm not familiar with the details, is that there's some kind of a long-standing agreement between the MBTA and the neighborhood that was signed like 20 years ago about how this site is going to be redeveloped, that they're going to put housing and community space on the Washington Street side to create kind of a wall of decent urbanism along the Washington Street side, like they have the new residential buildings on the other side as well. And I think there's a provision for a strip of green space in there. But like, also keep in mind that we're talking something that's 300 feet from Franklin Park and 800 feet from the Arboretum. So even if there's not a ton of green space on the site, it's not like this is still one of the greenest lots available for development of any kind in the entire city. even if it is on a major roadway that is kind of bad in terms of pollution and noise.
Yep.
Very good point. I forgot about that. Yeah, the proximity is tremendous. Yeah. Craig, go ahead.
I was just gonna to answer your question. What Gardy did his way. I wouldn't hold the developers to a higher standard than I would the T, and say, well, the T, oh, you're the T, you don't have to plant trees and you don't have to give community space. You can just do whatever you want. But developers will make it up on, we'll ring you instead. I would say we should be holding the T to the same standard that we hold other entities that are building, in terms of trying to get them to maximize the amount of green space they use and maximize the amount of additional community benefits that we can.
Yeah, the other thing is that, without Olmsted and Elliott, a lot of the cities in North America would be much less livable than they are today. I mean, the whole idea was to network the park system with these greenways. So, I mean, that was the integrated thinking of Olmsted and Elliott, or Olmsted and Elliott. And actually, I don't know if folks know this, but all the designs are in Alston. It's a National Historic Site where all those designs are.
I'm forgetting, was the Emerald Necklace designed all the way down to Arbor Way from the beginning? Or was it just, did it start off in the, the Fenway, Charles Bank area and then
it was a pretty complete design.
Okay.
It was in all of the parks that Olmsted and Elliott worked on. And they brought in Elliott because Olmsted was getting, he was getting older and he was having a harder time thinking, and his son needed a partner, and Elliott was a great designer as well.
Wig, you continue to impress me with being so well read. Go ahead.
No, I'm just old, and a few of these tidbits kind of are stuck in my head somewhere. I did want to bring up one other question, which is different though, and I'm wondering what the battery weight penalty is at this point in time. The issue with battery buses has always been how long the charge lasts, but also what is the weight penalty of the batteries as compared with electric charge along the route. So do we know what the current weight penalty is?
I don't, but that sounds like yet another good reason to have Scott Hamway join us for a future meeting. I mean, he could talk to the, as you said, the weight penalty for BEBs, and also talk about the design and green space and neighborhood relationships.
Yep.
Definitely don't quote me on this, but I want to say the weight penalty for a battery bus over a diesel electric one now is more like 30%.
Yeah, that sounds about right, Sandy. It used to be like 50%, but I'm sure there's been improvements.
The point that Scott made about this in the public meeting is that they'll be looking at buses that can do both charging in the depot overnight and flash charging at the other end of their route or en route.
Yeah,
and that might allow them to, the tech is changing all the time. That might allow them to get away with a slightly lighter battery. Also, the battery tech is advancing, and at their midlife overhaul, the buses will almost certainly get a more modern battery. Also, they're planning to, any battery bus they buy is going to have a small diesel generator for heating in the winter, because otherwise it's just not doable.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, and I don't want to go out on a limb too far, but it seems to me like we're in New England, we're never going to have a vehicle heat system which can be driven off of the same battery store as propulsion. I would love to be proven wrong before I'm 6 feet under, but I think chances are pretty good that we're always going to have some carbon emission energy source for the heating during the winter months. I mean, Wig, have you heard anything otherwise lately?
No, but I'm certainly not an expert on it. I really haven't tried to look into this recently.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable give and take there. I mean, the number of months out of the year when we need to fire up heat in the buses is certainly not 6 months. It's probably I'm guessing somewhere between 3 and 4 months out of the year. So having a constant speed, small scale diesel diesel engine just for the purposes of heat, it's best we can do right now, I guess.
Yep, that sounds right.
All right, well, I will take away from this discussion with you gents that we should have Scott Hamway join us for a future meeting to talk about all of these points. And unless there's more, I'll move on.
Good.
Okay, cool. I think the final thing that I wanted to present was the scaling back, if I can find the right tab here, the scaling back of the bus service to account for the limited operator staff. Sorry, I'm trying to find the right tab here. Too many going on. Did I not open this already? Oh, that's right. It's a PowerPoint, which I can't display in the browser. Rats. Stand by one sec. Let me see if I can get this open just for the purposes of showing the PowerPoint. Basically, the bottom line is, here we go. I thought this graphic was particularly notable. I don't know if this is going to, is that reasonably viewable? Like this, the graphic and the text here?
Well, the text in the graphic is not too useful.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll just talk through it, but
The rest of it is.
I thought this was particularly compelling, and I thought Kat did a great job explaining how the impact is going to manifest to bus riders. So in other words, as this graphic, the top line here shows, if trips are being dropped and trips are being dropped in an inconsistent way, which is typical for dropped trips, somebody who's waiting might have expected 10-minute wait, but if there's a dropped trip, that could manifest in a 20-minute wait, and it could be completely unpredictable and and unforeseen. So by reducing the frequency, it's accounting for the lack of available operators because of COVID and other hiring related difficulties. It's going to be maintaining regular service simply by spacing out the trips. And I thought it was very well presented. I actually typed into to Angel, who was the meeting host, how I thought this graphic was very compelling and very well done, along with the explanation, of course, that Kat always does a great job at this. Do you want me to talk much more about this, or is it pretty much
it's
self-explanatory? Yeah,
it's self-evident from the graphic and your discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it's there. I forget who it was, but they were talking about you can't get blood from a stone. Trying to hire people is one of their top efforts to address this. I mean, doubling the size of HR recruiting. Wow. I mean, it sounded to me like they are leaving no stone I'm using a lot of euphemisms, sorry. They're leaving no stone unturned in attempting to hire more operators. I couldn't think of anything that they're not already doing to try to get manpower, person power behind the wheel.
So to plug something else that I do, I run the MPO's Transit Working Group, and we hosted a coffee chat for transit providers recently, virtual coffee chat, so now we're on Zoom, about the driver shortage. And it was a nice, frank, honest conversation. We haven't posted the recording because some of the people requested that we keep it confidential, so they could talk honestly. We had representatives from several departments of the T and several of the other, all of the other local regional transit authorities, and everybody's really struggling with this. I think it's especially bad at the T because pay at the T for rookie drivers is very, very, very low. It is not competitive with other opportunities, even as a driver. That's unfortunately, I think, still true, even with the new labor agreement that they just concluded, though they did have some signing bonuses included in that may help the situation. You can make a good living as a senior driver at the T, but it's really hard if you're fresh and new. But it is an industry-wide problem, and they're exploring, and I'm going to try and help facilitate some of this, talking to some of the workforce development folks, but it's a long term. It's going to be a bit of a slog for the next few months at the very least. There's just not a whole lot of good news on this front out there, I'm afraid.
Do you think you could use some of the housing development and put new drivers in there at subsidized rents as long as they kept driving?
That's a fascinating idea. It's something to pitch to the T, right? Build a new garage, put driver housing on top of it, have zero commute in the mornings if you're getting up at 4 a.m. to drive a bus.
Yeah, especially if you're recruiting from other regions. People moving here from a lot of the US are not going to be used to the housing costs. And if you were helping them with that, it might ease the transition.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm in a position to push that, but somebody should propose it. Certainly a creative solution.
And education of those drivers, or I should say education of repair people, for those buses, also in the complex.
Yes, yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah.
You need a commercial driver's license to drive a 40-foot bus.
Yeah.
In Massachusetts, you need a CDL to drive anything more than 14 passengers, I want to say. So some of the smaller providers in the RTAs only drive cutaway vans, which have 13 seats. If they can have 14, but they take the 14th one out. So they don't need to hire CDL qualified drivers. But it does cost money to learn to drive any kind of a bus or truck. And some providers have started paying for that training. Others have not quite caught on yet.
But also education for repairing the vehicles.
Yes.
And also staying up with the technology, and who knows, maybe we'll have something other than buses, or big buses that can be used for transit. And those can just be like transit hubs, for all kinds of activity that can draw on the neighborhood. It's provide opportunities for people in the neighborhood. So yeah, maybe get someone, maybe the advisory council can chime in on things like this with them.
Just before I leave this topic and we go over to subcommittee reports, I just wanted to call out that it's not all bleak, because there are at least 3 routes that are getting increased frequency in response to the demand. And there's also some that are getting some additional days during the week. So, lots of routes with reduced, but a couple that are just structure, and some are actually being brought up.
Well, as long as people know what to expect, generally, they can adapt. They may not be happy being told that things are going to change, but I think if things work as you predictably, then that's better, than expecting it to behave one way and then being disappointed because it's not. And so you just need to really be straight with people, and that he wasn't actually. I'm thinking about someone who wasn't. Anyways, go ahead.
Oh, no, sort of finish your. Go right ahead, please.
No, I'm done.
After you.
I'm done. I'm done.
Okay. Okay. I simply wanted to mention that I asked at this public meeting, I asked if there was some miraculous turnaround in the hiring, and we had boatloads of people suddenly on the payroll. You know, what's the training? What's the lead time for getting people trained and qualified and everything? And you know, if they were available before the next rating, before the spring changes, I mean, you know, would they consider rolling out more things? And basically the answer was no. We really are operating at the same quarterly planning as always. So if there was a big increase in hiring between now and February, it would still be implemented in the new spring schedules, which I think makes sense.
Oh. I don't know what the maximum throughput on training is, but I don't think uh, I, I don't think it's not like yeah. I mean, I just don't know what the maximum throughput on training is. And so I wouldn't expect it to be huge. I mean, so if they got like a lot of people who wanted to be trained, I mean, they probably couldn't go faster than the rate at which they were going before the pandemic. I just don't know though. I mean, Dave would know.
I agree. Okay, so that's what I wanted to cover for the three big meetings, and thank you for engaging. I didn't think that we'd be able to go almost a whole hour on this. I'm going to put off the topic of the board health, safety, and environment simply because they don't have their slide deck up, and you can see what I was getting trying to pull up the video playback just to show you the slides. So I will skip that and talk about it at a future date. But back to, where's our agenda? Too many windows, too many tabs. Oh, there it is. Okie dokie. Len or Wig, would you like to go first talking about subcommittee?
Well, I mean,
not me. Not me. I mean, is there
Well,
anyone on here who hasn't participated in the subcommittees lately? I mean, I guess I'm not sure what you're asking.
Oh, I'm saying, are you ready to give us the update on the subcommittee report?
well, Wig isn't a chair of a subcommittee.
Oh, that's
But
right.
anyways,
I forgot Wig's not the chair of the subcommittee.
Sorry,
I apologize.
That's what was throwing us off. I mean, not anyone who's got a subcommittee can report on it. So I didn't want to like say anything because, like, well, if anyone's at a meeting they want to like start talking about it, by all means, do
no,
so.
You're absolutely right. I forgot it's still technically Brian as the other co-chair.
Yeah,
my mistake. That's sorry to get you flustered. Now I'm flustered.
I was just a little Anyways, I'll be brief. You know, so we had Rocio Tua talk to us about bus furniture, Main Street, and it did. I think they have like $7 million to spend. I mean, on bus furniture, and then they are looking at benches, shelters, and signs, electronic signs, e-signs, and kiosks. The kiosks I think are still under development, and so it's not really clear how many stops how many stops they're going to be able to provide amenities to at this point, and exactly what amenities are going to go where. I mean, so essentially they are still in the planning stages on this, but Rocio was really happy to talk with us, so she'll come back. All we have to do is ask. And I'll check in with her and see when she feels that she has something new that she wants to provide, new information she wants to provide to us. She certainly has a very interesting history. I mean, she comes from the world of finance, and wanted to do something for her that had more meaning for her. I mean, she has a family, that works in has worked and works in transportation and transit. So from that point of view, she has experience with the with sector. But the deal I feel with, and I'm really happy that someone like her is at the T, because I think it takes a person who can learn and is curious, to do well at a job. And I know the word passion can be overused. And sometimes I'm a little wary of it because you don't want passion to blind reason. But I'll say she has a lot of energy. A lot of enthusiasm about transit, and certainly understands it from the equity lens. And so. Or from the exit with the focus on equity. And I think that was really where we got an interest in this coming out of operations. Like, well, why is it when we are developing a site in Somerville or putting a developing like there's a roadway project in Somerville that we felt would have lent itself to providing more amenities. Why isn't that wasn't done at that time? And one of the arguments is that we have to think about how we roll out our bus amenities in a way that increases equity on the system. And whereas we didn't address that in specifically, that issue was something that not only is on Rochia's mind, but it certainly is it's a policy at the T. So I'll put that out there. And I'll also add, not coming out of the subcommittee, but coming out of the MPO, is that the T is doing its well, the T is going to do Title VI DBDI policy update. And so we'll probably be involved in that. And so it's a little distracting to me, Stefan, what you're doing. I'm sorry. So I guess what I should do is just not look at the screen. So that's why I'm having a
Oh,
hard
I'm sorry.
time. Yeah, no
No,
problem.
I don't need to do
Yeah,
that. That
yeah,
was
no
just,
problem. No
I
problem.
thought
It was
that
just
might
distracting
just
me.
be.
Yeah, no problem. No,
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from. It's just a little distracting. So what I'm going to do
Yeah.
is not look at the screen. I'll look at another screen.
No, it's just back.
So
It's back to the agenda. Feel free
yeah,
to look right
yeah,
at us now.
no problem. So where was I? So I think that was it. Yeah, I think I'm ready to wrap it up. Yeah, that's it. That was a big part of the meeting. So there you go. Any questions? Oh, there was the thing about regional transit. So I had thought about creating a letter for us to support that legislation that is being supported by Mass Public Health, and Transportation for Massachusetts, and they're asking for 94 million for supporting regional transit. But I have I want to talk with one of the one of the staff, the chief of staff, for one of the co-sponsors, to get his advice about when to send that letter. And so I'll be talking with him next Monday, and then we'll decide as to whether we can help with the letter as a rock, or maybe it might be something better done as individuals or through other entities. And so that's about it. Any questions?
No, that was great. Thank you very much. I'm going to just say out loud, I have to remind myself out loud to read a public comment that someone submitted in the YouTube chat. And very quickly, I'm going to grab the link for this Zoom and put it in the YouTube chat in case that person wants to come on for the public comment period at the end. In fact, I should do that on a regular basis, is put the Zoom link in the YouTube description. Sorry for typing in a different window. This will only take about 30 seconds.
Yeah, no problem. Well, let's see.
There we
Anything
go.
else I can say?
Okay.
All right.
Oh, it's Tori. Excellent. Okay, I gave Tori the link. Okay, ready for me to proceed to the other subcommittee report?
Sure.
Excellent. I've got the notes ready to go. Our special guest was a first time for any ROC meeting. How's that? Is that fairly visible for everybody?
Yes.
Excellent. Eric Studoff, it's pronounced Stuthoff, was our special guest. The Office of the Chief Engineer, and Eric Studoff is the Chief Engineer for the MBTA. As I noted here, he has the sign-off authority for essentially everything. I mean, from capital construction projects like GLX to vehicle design, maintenance. He's the top authority for engineering of all types. We had Joe Cheever from the E&M, which, as we found out, is Engineering Maintenance Department, on in a previous meeting. Joe reports to Eric. And also, I didn't realize, Bill Wolfgang, who is the Director of Vehicle Engineering, also reports to Eric Studoff. So Eric is, like I said, the top of the food chain for anything to do with engineering of any kind. Maintenance is also a part of the Office of the Chief Engineer. Maintenance of way is part of the Office of the Chief Engineer. We had some very specific discussions about how the Southwest Corridor has direct fixation, meaning that the tracks are fixed to concrete slabs. I believe it's similar to the north end of the Harvard to Alewife construction, and that posed some issues for that part of the Red Line. There's also been issues with, I think Jacob raised this, there's been some slow zones, some slow travel restrictions on the Orange Line Southwest Corridor because of deterioration of that direct fixation track. There are some, this is a pronunciation, this is not to be taken literally. Eric said something that sounded like Clonegs. I forgot to look it up to Google it, but it's basically a vibration isolation system. It's only really used near Tufts because of the importance in isolating vibration near the hospital with all the sensitive equipment. But in other areas, there's constraints on how the Southwest Corridor is constructed. And so there really is not any opportunity to replace the current track fixation mechanism with something that might be an improvement. So we're basically, the bottom line is we're stuck with the direct fixation track cemented or track bolted right to concrete for ever and a day until basically that's the way it's always going to be. I thought it was great to hear that Eric calls transit-oriented development compelling and important for society. That's not a direct quote, but it's a very close paraphrase to what he said. I thought that was wonderful to hear from the chief engineer of the agency, that TOD is important. I will try to skip over some of the finer points. We ought to, in a future meeting, talk to Denny Levy. She is the head of customer experience. And as I said here, she would be a person to discuss some of our ideas for how to get out, how to help the agency, the MBTA, get out in front of the negative PR that comes about from having concrete, which is really just decorative, looking fractured and decayed, and having steel zip ties to hold up what looks structural, but it's really not. So again, that was Eric's recommendation, was to talk to Danny about ideas for messaging that, hey, this might look bad, but it's not a safety problem. This is not a structural deterioration that you see. Talked a little bit about some of the challenges of introducing new power cables into the old. I didn't know that there's still a lot of power cables out there that are lead and paper as maybe 100-year-old kind of insulation. As I mentioned in the previous discussion of the Arborway, I have a to-do for talking to Scott and or Alexandra for some of the things. And then after Eric left the meeting, after spending a whole hour with us, which was great. Thank you again, Eric, for spending an hour with us. These discussions, I don't think, unless you gents think any of these are worth calling out, I will just have them up on the screen. I called out Craig on a couple of different things. Oh yeah, and thank you again, Craig, for the firsthand observations from the new 28 on Blue Hill Ave dedicated bus lanes. And let's see, any comments or questions, not additional, anything to mention or to add to this?
Well, one thing I didn't, I mean, this is a small footnote, but a lot of the rest of the world, including South American cities, have been doing center roadway buses and bus-like, kind of bus-like, not quite light rail, but bus imitations of light rail. And one of the issues is the pollution, right? That there's an awful lot more pollution if you're waiting in the center of a roadway. And, as vehicles get more electric, the issues with pollution are going to shift more to the tire wear and brake wear and road dust kicked up and that kind of thing. But it's still going to be an issue. And I never thought to bring that up here because we really don't have that many situations, but there are giant boulevards in South America with like 20 lanes and traffic, filling those lanes, and the exposures in the center transit are really high and concerning. So we'll see how that works. Unfortunately, most air pollution exposures are log linear. So you cut the pollution in half, you don't nearly cut the health effects in half.
What are the what's the relative particulate size for the rubber tire deterioration and asphalt deterioration that is particulate matter?
That's a really good question. And I haven't looked at those studies lately, especially with regard to size. I mostly use them for kind of smart growth type classes that I, once in a while I get invited to lecture to a smart growth class that, how do you do modern land uses and including transit rather than single occupancy vehicles. But with air pollution, size matters, shape matters, the surface charge pattern matters. And there is unfortunately been a separation of expertise between people concerned with environmental justice on the one hand, air pollution scientists that are fixated on regional PM 2.5, which doesn't vary at all near busy roadways or, flight paths or stuff like that. And everybody has kind of decided that fine particles, which are 2.5, 2,500 nanometers or smaller in diameter, And neither of these groups understand the advanced cell biology and immunology. So, so you could go to Harvard School of Public Health and ask the foremost group of researchers in the US for the last 20 years, what size particles and surface charge pattern get into immune cells and drive immune reactions that result in health effects. And you will have a very hard time finding anybody that knows anything at all about that. And all of the nanoparticle scientists in the medical world, which is much more highly resourced, have been onto this and with an extraordinary growth in knowledge over the last 20 years. So there's a big separation in knowledge. Actually the largest that I've ever seen in my life. And without knitting those, without creating an overlap in understanding environmental justice, the real technical nitty-gritty of air pollution and immune cell biology, the stuff goes unsolved and people just keep going in their silos.
I can see that. Yeah. Do you know, Wig, is there, I mean, with regard to the specifics of the center of bus dedicated lanes and, you know, as you said, the exposure because you're out in the middle, so you're getting it from all sides. Is there greenery mitigation that can be done? I mean, obviously space is tight, but I mean, there's some greenery that we're seeing along the edges. Does that help?
And this all needs to be taken with a grain of salt. You know, if there's not much traffic, you shouldn't worry about it. If you're not spending that much time there, you shouldn't worry about it. It's really the more steady, heavily trafficked roads that are an issue, and especially people who hang out there. But yeah, there's a lot of small studies. You know, for example, a 3-foot hedge between a bike lane and a major roadway cuts the pollution in half that's inhaled. Same thing with parked cars. You know, it depends what type of pollution you're talking about, what the drop off is. Sound walls, EPA Mobile Labs has done and EPA Science group in Research Triangle Park have done a lot of work on sound walls, and so have the Californians, but pretty much not anybody else. So sound walls are very effective, not just on the sound, but also on the, you know, reducing the pollution.
Well, then
let me stop. I don't want to go.
Yeah, just to bring us back, I think the moral of the story here is that there's some skepticism. I made up a word. Skepticism on this committee around center bus lanes, and that doesn't mean there's not a lot of pros to them. But I think Wiggs brought up an interesting point around pollution. Len's brought up an interesting point around, you know, freight traffic. The answer is, I think the reality is there's a lot of cons to them as well. So they are both good and bad, and that's okay. We just need to, on our tight, narrow streets where we don't have the luxury of putting in hedges and sound wall, when we do things on tight budgets where we don't, sound walls cost money. You know, if we really had the money and all the money in the world, we'd probably put an electrified, higher, you know, not a bus, but a rapid transit line. So this is a pragmatic solution that has its cons, and I think it's a good conversation about the cons. But it'd be just like we said in the last meeting, it'd be more to come on this, and something that we should continue to follow is see how do the pros outweigh the cons, and we'll know that. You know, I think that's part of what I see this as is kind of a case study.
And the context. The context is important. You know, I have a Somerville context, and we have the biggest highways in the state relative to population density. So, you know, Craig is, you know, on a city street, sound walls are a completely different thing. But to Craig's point, you might rather hang out with a cup of coffee on a bench with retail and a populated sidewalk while you're waiting for the bus than hang out in the middle of the roadway.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in and point out a couple of things. First, to Wig's point about how the time of exposure matters, it's yet another reason that the buses need to be coming frequently and reliably, so that people aren't spending all their time out there in the middle of the road. That should be enough to mitigate a lot of the concern about exposure. I just want to say that, like, on any wide roadway, center running bus lanes are the international standard. They have so many operational advantages that, especially in terms of reliability and bus speed at peak hour, that it's just very hard to, from a pure operational perspective, a rider benefit perspective, to argue against it, especially because otherwise you're really just shifting the pollution exposure over to the curb. And then also, that, just in case folks aren't aware, I know Len is, that the MPO will be funding phase 2 of the Columbus Avenue bus lane project, which is going to extend them from Jackson Square up to Ruggles. And that funding is in this fiscal year 22. I don't know when construction is planning to start, but that will be coming up shortly. So we'll extend, really double the length of or more than double the length of the center running bus lanes on Columbus.
Right. And I wanted to add to that, my concern about the curb wasn't specific to the center lane for the bus. I mean, it was more about how we are thinking about using the curb, for lots of other things, bike lanes and whatnot, and how it is that, how do we factor freight into our use of the curb, while also trying to enhance or make public transit better, whether that's in the center or on the sides.
When you say freight, you mean deliveries?
Deliveries, yes.
Yep.
Yes. So a lot of the big freight, we try to get it out of the rush hour traffic, but still it has to park somewhere.
Yep.
And so if it can't park on side streets or in the back, then they'll have to park on the curb. And how do we accommodate that? So it's just something we need to factor in. Is it smaller vehicles? We just have to figure it out. But that's why Sandy's on the job. He's going to
well,
freight.
Actually, I learned that MAPC is going to be doing a lot of work on curb usage and delivery. We've got an MPO study on it this year also. So there's a lot of activity around this, but Allison Felix and Travis Pollock at MAPC are really on the job. In case you haven't seen it, they did a really excellent study on e-commerce delivery last year. And they're going to be following up on that, doing some mapping of warehouse locations and thinking about how to optimize curb use. I also had a great conversation with Matt Warfield of the City of Boston Transportation Department about their curb management work last week. So lots percolating in that field, lots of exciting stuff going on.
Excellent. Maybe we could schedule some of that stuff that can't be fit into a 3-hour MPO meeting, at an RTAC meeting, or even here. Especially if it affects transit and just want people to talk about some ideas. So this is great.
You know where to find me.
Please.
Yeah, you know where to find us.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you mentioned the deliveries, because I got a call out that during the subcommittee meeting, Craig said how he observed a delivery truck blocking the only general travel lane, which was forcing everybody else to go around the truck into the dedicated bus lane.
Yeah, and actually Tegan knows a lot about that too, Len, from Cambridge.
Yes,
Yes.
you could just stop with Tegan knows a lot, and then you're right. You're right about everything else. Yeah.
Very good. Well, I just got to say thank you for Sandy. Thank you for commenting about the rapid or the more rapid travel times and reduced headways in a dedicated lane, helping to reduce the exposure because of reducing the wait times. Because I wanted to call that out myself, but I didn't really have any. I didn't feel like I have any authority on it, but I was wondering that. Okay. Let's jump back to the agenda, because we might have actually gone a little over on subcommittee reports, but unusual for me, I don't have any old business, new business to bring up on my own behalf. And I think the report on external meetings that I kind of did that during the recap of those. So I will defer to anybody else for external meetings, old business, new business.
The calendar, the the schedule, for next year. I mean, so everyone, I hope, got that. And,
Yep.
and please take note that in November and December, what the plan is to combine all the subcommittee meetings into one meeting, that first meeting of the month, and then have the second full rock meeting 2 weeks early, so that we're not running into the holidays at all. So we won't have a meeting the week of Thanksgiving. We'll have the meeting, the week before Thanksgiving, and the last meeting of the year will not be anywhere close to Christmas. It'll be the week before. So instead of it being like on the 21st, as it is today, it'll be on I guess that year it'll be like the 13th or something. So the deal is that it's something new. We are going to have all the committee meetings at the same time in that first meeting of the month. So if people don't like that, we have plenty of time to change things. I just want to let you know that's something new for next year. And so otherwise the schedule's pretty much the same. The MCOP meetings the second Tuesday of the month. The CF meeting is the third Tuesday of the month, and the full rock meeting is the fourth Tuesday of the month, with the executive committee meeting being on the third Tuesday of the month. Everything's going to be online. And
Terrific. Thank you for
sure.
doing that every year.
Yes, thank you very much, Lynn.
Probably once
So-
you have the template, it's pretty easy. Go ahead.
Stefan, I've been screwing up a lot of stuff because my to-do list is too long, and I sent you a really short PowerPoint with some big ideas, but I realized that was meant to be for the capital meeting. But if you've got 3 or 4 minutes, I could run through that. I just sent it to you.
Absolutely. I'm looking at it right now. Want me to pull it up and show it?
Yeah, if you would pull it up, that'd be terrific. And people can, we can send it around or come back to it. I just want to kind of whet people's appetites with it or not.
Yeah. All right. Here we
Could
go.
you forward Could someone forward it to me? Because it's easier for me to read it on another screen. And the resolution is better. And also, I can look at what I want to look at instead of having to deal with someone else at wherever they are. And then flash
Stefan,
me.
can you send it to the whole rock so Lynn can just pick it out?
I will do that right now. Yep.
Stefan's screen's a little hyperactive for me.
Yeah, Stefan, is there any way of simplifying your screen?
What I find works for me, Quig, is that I've just kind of reduced the screen down to a very small thing so that as it's moving around, it's not so distracting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's tough. I battle with trying to include the chat and participants' names and
I get that.
I guess that it is redundant.
But for 4 minutes, could you just go full screen on the slides?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. If that's absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
If that's not full screen. That's full screen.
Well, it's close enough. And maybe shrink it 5% or 10%. I'm missing the. Yeah, that's a little too much.
Okay.
So anyway, this is just mass greenhouse gas emissions, and the only point of this slide is where the red arrow is, which is transportation just dominates. It just blows away other sectors. And if you look at, compare transportation with residential or commercial, it just blows them away. So just go to the next slide. People can look at this in their in there. Okay, so this is from US EIA, and I guess the point here was just, again, on the left-hand side, you see residential and commercial energy consumption relative to transportation consumption nationwide. I mean, it just is far and away. Most people kind of think of buildings and green buildings and insulation when they're thinking of energy and greenhouse gases, but that's not the case. Transportation is by far the biggest problem. Next slide. Okay, so this is an analysis from a couple of years ago, but the data stays pretty much the same. This is offshore wind tech potential using current technology already deployed in Northern Europe and China offshore. So if you look on the very left, what you see is that Maine can get roughly 35 times its total electric consumption with current offshore wind technology. That doesn't have to be that close to the coast that the billionaires are going to be bothered. So in other words, 35 times. Obviously, it would need to export most of that, and it would need an efficient regional grid, including Eastern Canada. Massachusetts can get 20 times our total electric consumption with offshore wind. In other words, the two states could quickly provide more than twice the electricity needed for all of New England. Completely eliminate fossil fuels and export electricity, one to help other places that don't have the same offshore potential. Okay, next slide. I don't know if people are aware of this data. That's why I just wanted to tease people with it.
I had absolutely no idea. I mean, 20 times, that's mind-boggling.
I know, and that's current technology. And Massachusetts is doing pretty well. Maine is not. Everybody's fighting in Maine, even though it is really the savior for their marine employment. This slide you've seen before, but I'm starting to, I think people know that most of the T's rail-based assets, rail-based transit assets, urban transit, are in Boston and Cambridge. Somerville is very fortunate to be getting the Green Line. And then it doesn't go nearly as far up toward Lynn, right? You got 2 Blue Line stations beyond Boston. That's it. Okay, next slide.
One quick thing, Wig, the numbers on the right hand that's the number of stations in each municipality?
Yeah, I just counted them up quickly myself one afternoon.
That's very interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that stat before. Maybe it's in the blue book, but that's very powerful.
I could have easily made a couple mistakes, but I just wanted to start.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Next, okay. So this is an environmental justice analysis, and the blue shows basically the EJ densities in Cambridge Cambridge and Boston mostly. And those populations are pretty well served by the transit system, right? That's where the T's main investments have been over the years. And the red shows the really dense EJ to the north of the Mystic River, and that's not nearly as well served. And furthermore, it is not connected to the evolving parts of the economy. I mean, the evolving parts of the economy are Cambridge and Boston, and a few a few runners out from there. Next slide. So this is the federally filed opportunity zones. And what you see, the cluster in the lower left, is they're almost all on the lower Mystic, right? Charlestown is a major portion of Boston's opportunity zones. Assembly Square, that's doing fine. Medford's opportunity zones are on the lower Mystic, but look to the northeast side of the lower Mystic. All of those are the opportunity zones in those dense neighborhoods. And then look up to Lynn, right? I mean, you look at Lynn and Revere and Saugus. These are the communities that do not have the electrified rail-based transit equal to Boston and Cambridge, that have the environmental justice communities, that have been slaughtered by COVID, and that are not tied into the evolving parts of the economy. Next slide. Same thing, but here what you see, this is kind of a reverse. This shows higher income versus lower income. And that same area within the square where the arrow is pointing is where the low income communities don't have great access or don't have comparable transit access to Boston and Cambridge, and also don't have access to the new economy. Next slide. So here are 2 urban ring I always liked the Phase 3 urban ring, which was going to be rail-based and was predicted in the final EIR to carry 300,000 passengers a day on one rail line. So it would blow away all of the current rail-based transit, urban transit. And it was also predicted to open up 150,000 trips per day on the other rail-based transit. So to open up 150,000 trips per day on red, blue, orange with this urban ring project. So the total capacity was projected and needed was 450,000 trips per day. You can't do that with buses or BRT. You'd need 50 traffic lanes. Next slide. So this is just a slimmer one. And what this shows is an idea that I just, wanted to throw out there. I've mentioned it before. But right now, the blue line comes down, it gets into Boston, it goes in, 2 stations, basically. And I know Fred Salvucci's heart is set on connecting red and blue. But what this idea posits is that you take the blue line around this loop, that you take one of the green line branches, convert it to blue line, that the bottom left of this slide goes through Longwood Medical Longwood Medical area. So the 2 greatest biology research centers in the United States are Kendall Square, by far number 1 because of MIT's aggression and attraction of all those institutes. And then secondly, Longwood Medical. Together, there's nowhere in the country that competes with them right now. California is larger in scale, but it's stretched out over 900 miles. So this presumes you capture a green line route, you probably would need to tunnel under Longwood Medical, and then you pick up Grand Junction. The whole rest of that is Grand Junction. It exists now, and there's new capacity being built on the south side for Boston Engine Terminal. Right now, Grand Junction is used for a few freight trains that cross the region and to ferry locomotives to Boston Engine Terminal in Somerville. But the need to ferry those locomotives is going to dwindle dramatically with the south side engine terminal being built. So that whole northwestern half of this is existing right of way on the Grand Junction. From Boston across, it crosses the Charles River on the Grand Junction. Grand Junction goes right up between MIT's campus and Central Square, goes right up through Kendall Square, wraps around the Boston Engine Terminal, and then makes a beeline for Somerville. And I've shown this curling off on the Grand Junction and then going along the north side route through Everett and then back to get up to Lynn. So I just wanted to float this for people. Now there's possibility of a loop on the other end if you looped the blue line a little bit into Lynn and maybe came down the commuter rail side on the inside of the marshes. But this would wrap those left out people into the modern economy and give them access to jobs, whether they already work in Longwood and have to take a long commute or Kendall, or at Mass General, which is just a short walk away from this in Boston. But it would bring in that whole north side that's been left out of our economy. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Thank you, Wig. That is very compelling.
It's very good. Maybe we'll have you come and talk to the advisory council as we start getting as the MPO starts working on the next LRTP. And so
Sure.
I'd like to combine
And
this meeting with some, and let me just finish. And I'd like to combine this with someone from at MassDOT to tell us what they are doing with respect to the future transportation report, which is very good. And so have an update on that, see how that will fit into the next LRTP, and put this in as a new idea. And so maybe April, May, June. Thanks.
Yeah, that sounds great.
yeah, this kind of got killed by Focus 40.
Well, we'll have Scott Hamley in that conversation too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick time check that we're coming up on 7, but I'm not going to shortchange people on public comment because I know that Tori wants to weigh in on something. I'm not going to give it away. Let me just check in with Barry really quick. Barry, did you want to make any comment before the end of the meeting? I think we'll go maybe a few minutes past 7 because we didn't really start until about quarter after. But if anybody has to leave at 7, that's fine. But I will entertain a good at least 5 solid minutes for public comment. Barry, did you want to speak, or shall we
No,
go
I'll let
to?
it go.
Okay,
I'll
that's
let it
fine.
go.
No problem. Unless there's anything else, I'll go to public comment and then we'll call it a night. Any concerns?
Good idea.
Okay, cool. Then Tori, welcome aboard. Feel free to say what's on your mind. You should be able to unmute right now.
There it is. Hi, folks. First off, I just wanted to thank you guys for doing what you're doing and carrying this torch. And I don't know if it's a paid position. You should be getting paid. So just wanted to say thanks.
We thank you. No, for the record, no, we get no compensation whatsoever for volunteering on this committee. The only thing we get is speaking, hopefully not speaking for everybody incorrectly, but we get the satisfaction of hopefully making a difference. And there's a little bit of satisfaction also in being able to have access to people at the MBTA and MassDOT to get the inside scoop on things, or even just to be in close connection. So no, we're not compensated anyway, other than just from the gratification of the process and being involved.
Well, thank you guys. So my concern, it came up when there was some talk about, like, I think it was at a T station or bus station and talking about benches, and the T in recent months have been doing what's called hostile infrastructure. So basically at Davis Square, they, put dividers in benches. So they said it was for those with disabilities, in terms of mobile disabilities, and the commission on people with disabilities was like, in Somerville, was like, no one from the MBTA came and talked to us about this. This is blatant hostile architecture. So a person, let's say, who does not have a home can like rest out on the bench. And I just want to keep the MBTA aware of that, and that is not cool. And it hurts my heart when I saw this, and it feels really disrespectful. And then it also triggered this thought, when they took down all the trees in Somerville, they displaced a lot of people, including a friend of mine, Andrew. And so it's just like, I just want them to be a little more tuned into just what's really comes down to social justice and equity. And in Davis Square now, they did something very similar where they're dividing the benches, and we're a better society than that. And I want, if you have connections to MBTA people, not just ask them why they're doing it, but just like, stop it, do better. We're better than that. So that's my thought today. And again, thank you all, and happy solstice. And yeah, thanks for the work you put in.
Thank you, Tori. I don't have any comment I can make on the hostile architecture other than to say that we've discussed it previously and we will continue to be reviewing it. There's a lot of different sentiments amongst the committee members. And all I can say right now for myself is, yeah, we're watching that as an issue.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tori.
Anyone else want to make any final comments either to Tori's points or for anything else before we call it a night?
Well, generally what we do with the public comments is that we toss it to a subcommittee, to really look at it. It's not advisable really to comment on it in real time. I mean, so why don't we have another look at that in operations, and maybe bounce a question over to Rocio and see what she has to say about it. Maybe she can give us some advice as to whom we can talk more about the issue.
I was thinking that, yep.
Yeah.
Seeing as we've now got a relationship with Rocio, who's the head of street furniture.
Oh.
Yep, exactly.
I do want to say that because this is the last meeting of the year, we have had phenomenal guests. I mean, I just thank you guys who booked the guests, but also thank the guests themselves for the quality of their input.
And thank the pandemic for making people a lot more accessible. So it does help when people can do things remotely. I mean, so if there's going to be a silver lining to this seemingly never-ending pandemic, it's going to be the access that we get.
Yep, absolutely. I am still prepared to fire up my computer in a conference room and do all of this technology stuff live on Zoom if we ever have to. I mean, I've got everything one could need to do a multi-camera shoot, but who knows if I'll ever be able to use it again. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for a great year. I'm going to go ahead and motion to close.
I'll second that. Thank you all. Thanks again, Tori and Barry, for joining us. Have a wonderful holiday. Indeed, happy solstice. Thank you for that, Tori.
Happy solstice. Yeah.
Happy everything and merry all the other ones.
Yes.
Exactly. Happy
Yes.
Thanksgiving.
Enjoy.
Bye, everybody.
And happy New
Bye-bye.
Year. Be safe.
Yeah.